The wind howled through the dry junkyard on the edge of Mars, carrying red dust that never settled. Jace, a human mechanic with grease-stained hands and tired eyes, lived alone among rusted ship parts, broken androids, and forgotten machines. His life had no excitement, just silence and the sound of tools clanking. One night, during a sudden meteor storm, the sky lit up with fire, and something massive crashed just beyond the junk piles. Jace grabbed his old plasma torch and rushed toward the impact. What he found wasn't a shipwreck, it was a torn metal pod, burned and steaming. Inside, half buried in debris, lay a creature he had never seen before, towering and Volf-like, with silver-black fur, glowing yellow eyes, and armor fused to its body. The alien looked like a monster from a nightmare. But it was breathing barely. It wasn't attacking, just lying still, a deep gash across its chest leaking dark blood. Jace hesitated. He'd heard stories of aliens, especially beasts like this one, being dangerous. But something in its eyes stopped him. It didn't look angry, it looked lost, in pain, and tired. Against every warning in his mind, Jace dragged the creature back to his repair shack. For 2 days, it didn't move. Jace cleaned its wounds, used what little medicine he had, and kept it warm with heat coils. When it finally woke up, it didn't growl or snap. It only stared at him. Jace tried speaking, but the beast didn't respond. Still, every day, it watched him fix machines, gather scrap, and talk to himself like usual. Then one evening, the creature stood up. Its movement was slow, heavy, but it didn't attack. Instead, it walked to the dirt floor and began drawing shapes using a piece of scrap metal. Jace looked closer. It was a ship big, with long engines and what looked like claws at the front. The creature then pointed to the stars. Jace understood. It wanted to go home, or somewhere far away. It needed a ship. Not just any ship, but something massive, powerful. Jace looked around at his junkyard, then back at the creature. Building such a thing was crazy, maybe impossible. But something inside him, something human, felt a strange pull. This creature wasn't just a beast, it was alone, homeless, maybe even hunted, and for once, Jace felt like his life had a purpose. He nodded. The creature, he started calling it Fen, watched silently. The next day, Jace began dragging together large frames, melted down old engines, and rewired forgotten cores. Every night, he and Fen shared quiet moments. No words, just nods, looks, the occasional growl of agreement. Jace learned from Fen's gestures, the way it moved its clawed fingers over broken consoles, showing designs from memory. It wasn't just strong, it was intelligent. Each day, the warship began to take shape. Not sleek like human ships, but brutal, sharp-edged, and layered with strange alien metals that Fen helped locate in distant parts of the yard. Sometimes, Fen would howl softly at the stars, a sound that made Jace's skin crawl, not from fear, but sadness. He started to wonder, was this creature really a warrior, or just another soul trying to survive? He didn't ask. He didn't need to. He felt it. One evening, while installing the ship's inner hull, Jace burned his hand on a misfiring coil. He dropped to his knees in pain. Fen rushed over and gently took Jace's arm in its clawed hands. It hummed lowly, almost like a purr, then placed a cool metal stone from its belt over the burn. The pain eased instantly. They looked at each other, and Jace realized something powerful. This creature wasn't just using him. It cared. It remembered kindness. As more nights passed, strange lights started appearing in the sky, patrol ships from Mars orbit. Jace knew they might be tracking energy spikes from the ship's growing core. He buried the power signals deeper, underground. He didn't want them to find Fen. Not until the ship was ready. Not until Fen was safe. But a question began to grow in his mind. Who was Fen really? What would this warship be used for? Rescue, escape, or revenge? Jace didn't ask. Not yet. He focused on the work. Focused on the mission he had taken on. without even knowing why, and deep down, even as he tightened bolts and installed plasma wings, a single thought kept echoing in his mind: what have I built and what will it become? The sun rose weakly over the Martian horizon, casting long shadows across the growing skeleton of the warship hidden deep within the junkyard, and Jace stood beneath it, wiping sweat and dust from his forehead as he stared up at the massive structure that was slowly coming to life. He had built small ships before, cargo haulers, surface skimmers, maybe a racing pod or two, but this was different, far beyond anything he had ever imagined. Fen, the giant alien Volf beast who still spoke no words, worked silently beside him every day, pointing, sketching, or guiding his clawed hands over parts of the ship as if remembering blueprints from a time long lost. The design was ancient, brutal in appearance, yet strangely elegant, with long, spiked fins, overlapping armor plates like scales, and a pulse engine that glowed with a strange violet light technology not found in any human manual. Jace could feel the power humming beneath the floor, could hear the quiet thrum of energy deep in the belly of the machine, like a heartbeat waiting to wake. Fen had shown him how to build the ship's power core, an odd sphere that seemed to pull light inward, and it had taken days just to understand the basic structure. Every night, Jace collapsed into bed with sore muscles and aching hands, but his mind never rested. He kept wondering, what was the ship really for? Escape? Rescue? Revenge? And why did it need such heavy weapons, retractable cannons hidden under armored plates, and a cloaking field that could bend radar like shadows on water? The way Fen moved through the growing corridors, with quiet steps and watchful eyes, made Jace feel like they were building something more than just a ship. It was a memory, a symbol, maybe even a warning. The silence between them had grown comfortable, filled with quiet nods and shared purpose. But some nights Jace would catch Fen staring at the stars, shoulders low, eyes dim, as if remembering things long buried. Once, Fen showed him a hologram hidden in a damaged Modulan image of creatures like him, younger, smaller, some with strange metal bands on their arms, others with glowing tattoos on their fur. A family, a pack, Jace couldn't be sure, but the way Fen pressed one claw to the image told him all he needed to know. They were gone. That same night, while testing the fusion lines along the engine wall, Jace found a claw mark scratched into the metal, not accidental, but carved with intent. It was a symbol, jagged and sharp, and when he asked about it, Fen placed a hand over his chest and growled softly. Jace understood it as a name, or maybe a vow. Whatever it meant, it stayed burned in his memory. Then came the warning. A silent drone passed overhead, black, fast, and low. It didn't stop, but Jace knew it had scanned the yard. He immediately shut down the energy feed and covered the core with scrap, his hands shaking slightly as he worked through the night. Fen paced like a caged beast, his breath low and slow, his eyes always watching the sky. They both knew it wouldn't be long before someone came asking questions. Still, they didn't stop. The ship needed a heart, and Jace was going to finish it, no matter the cost. They added thick inner plating to resist ion bursts, built hidden weapon bays that Fen insisted be shielded from energy scans, and crafted an AI core in pieces of old Martian defense programs mixed with alien fragments Fen provided. The AI, once activated, called itself Nyx, and spoke in a calm, smooth voice that sent a chill down Jace's spine. It wasn't just software, it felt aware. When Nyx scanned Fen, it paused for several seconds before simply saying, "Command recognized," and that was when Jace knew Fen hadn't been just anyone before he crashed. He had been important. Maybe a leader. Maybe the last of something powerful. The deeper they got into the build, the more dangerous it felt. They were no longer just building a ship, they were awakening a relic from another time, something tied to war and loss. And yet, Jace couldn't stop. He felt drawn to it, pulled into its purpose even if he didn't fully understand it. Some days, the ship seemed alive, humming faintly when Fen approached, its lights flickering in soft patterns like it remembered him. Jace started dreaming of stars and wolves, of silent battles in forgotten skies, and of Fen standing at the front of the ship, not as a beast, but as a commander. He woke from those dreams with a strange feeling in his chest, a mix of fear and pride. He knew he had gone too far to back out. Then came the sound of engines, distant, sharp, and approaching fast. Jace looked up from the underbelly of the ship and saw a group of blinking red lights on the edge of the junkyard. Small patrol ships moving in formation. Fen growled low in his throat, his hackles rising. Jace didn't speak. He rushed to seal the hangar bay, activated the signal jammer, and told Nix to prepare emergency lockdown. The patrol didn't land, but they hovered just long enough to make it clear they knew something was here. Fen stood motionless beside the ship, claws flexing, eyes burning with silent rage. Jace knew the heart of the ship was now alive and soon it would have to be used. As the patrol vanished into the distance, leaving dust spinning in the air, Jace looked up at the towering warship they had built together, and his chest tightened with a terrible thought. This wasn't just a ship of escape, it might become a weapon of reckoning. The ship stood complete under the red Martian sky, silent and powerful, a shadow of old war and lost history now reborn through the hands of a human and the memory of a forgotten beast. Jace stared at it from a distance, the ground beneath his feet rumbling faintly as the ship's core pulsed with energy, stronger now than ever before. Fen stood at the base, head tilted back, eyes locked on the stars, as he let out a deep, echoing howl that shook the silence of the junkyard. It was a sound that carried far beyond the desert winds, deeper than any human ear could truly understand, and Jace knew it was more than a cry, it was a signal. That night, the sky changed, one by one. Faint shapes began to appear across the blackness above, falling like soft sparks, barely visible, but growing closer with every hour. At first, Jace thought it was debris, maybe lost cargo pods drifting near orbit. But as the first one landed, battered and smoking, he saw the truth. The door hissed open, and out stepped another like Fen, smaller, limping, fur burnt in patches, armor damaged, eyes dull from exhaustion. Fen rushed forward, and they touched foreheads for a brief second before the new arrival collapsed. Jace helped carry it inside. The next night, 2 more came, then 5. Then a whole swarm of ship-scracked escape pods, drifting ruins, barely held together. Vessels rained down over the next week. They were all Varnic, but none like Fen. Some were older, their fur turning white, their limbs stiff. Others were younger, quiet cubs who looked around with wide eyes and hid behind Fen whenever they saw Jace. There were dozens now, maybe more, and Jace had to expand the hangar to keep up. The warship, once meant for one, was becoming something else. The corridors echoed with low growls and foreign songs. The scent of strange oils and burning herbs filled the air as rituals were performed in corners Jace didn't understand. The ship was no longer just metal, it was alive with memories. Fen moved through the growing pack like a leader, but not a king. He shared his space, guided the weak, and gave silent comfort to the wounded. Jace began to see it clearly. Fen wasn't building a weapon, he was building a home. A moving fortress for his people, a last hope. One evening, as Jace walked through the lower deck, he found an elder Varnic placing a broken badge into a hollow near the wall, whispering words that the ship translated simply as "return us to the stars." It hit him then: the warship wasn't meant to fight alone. It was meant to carry the last of a species towards safety. Or maybe something more. But peace never comes easy. The Martian patrol returned, this time with purpose. A full squadron hovered near the junkyard, broadcasting warnings and demands. They had traced the energy spikes and seen the strange ships arriving. To them, it was a threat, a hidden alien army growing in secret. Jace stood on the outer platform, speaking calmly to their commander over a visual link. He explained the truth. These were refugees, not warriors. Survivors, not enemies. But the officer's face remained cold. Orders had been given. The Varnik were classified as a danger from the last Great War. They were not to be trusted. Jace refused a step aside. "If you want to take them," he said, his voice steady, "you'll have to get through me and through Fen." Behind him, the warship hummed with life, its lights flickering as the AI prepared defense mode. The elder Varnik formed a circle around the young. The others took positions, ready to defend their last chance at survival. The first shot came suddenly, a warning blast that hit the outer gate. Jace ran inside and activated the ship's shields. Fen roared, a sound of fury and protection, and the ship responded with a deep pulse that shook the air. Cannons unfolded. From hidden panels, energy blades lined the wings, and a shimmering cloak rippled across its hull. The ship, now alive in every way, moved as if sensing its people's fear. Jace sat at the control panel beside Fen, and for the first time, the alien looked at him not just as a builder, but as a brother. Together, they guided the ship into the sky, dodging blasts and disabling enemy drones without lethal force. Fen gave orders in growls and signals, and Jace translated them through Nyx. The two moved like one mind. The human defenders eventually backed off, shocked by the power of the ship and the unity of its strange crew. But the message was clear: this ship could not hide forever. Jace knew they had to leave. Fen agreed. That night, as the warship floated above the red sands for the last time, Jace walked through its halls, past the resting elders and sleeping cubs, past the armor of a fallen past, and into the control room. Fen was already there, eyes fixed on a star map projected before them. Thousands of red dots lit the screen beacons of old Varnik colonies, now silent. Fen pointed to one, then another, and another. Jace understood immediately. The journey wasn't over. They would find the rest. They would bring them home, not to a place, but to each other. As the ship roared into the sky and disappeared into the stars, it left behind a planet that never understood the meaning of what had risen from its dust. The lost were no longer lost. They had a leader, they had a ship, and they had a human who believed in them. The warship, now called the Howling Light, soared through deep space, silent but powerful, carrying the last of the Varnik people and the one human who had risked everything to protect them. Jace stood on the command deck beside Fen, watching stars pass in long streams while Nyx, the ship's AI, monitored systems and tracked incoming signals. They had found more survivors along the way, broken ships hiding in asteroid belts, damaged pods floating near dead moons, and even a few secret outposts buried in forgotten planets. Each time, the Howling Light opened its doors, and the pack grew stronger. But peace didn't last. One evening, while scanning a binary system for more hidden beacons, Nyx picked up fast-approaching vessels, human ships, military class, and many of them. They weren't here to talk. Jace's heart pounded as the alert spread through the ship. Fen growled low, and the pack moved quickly, leading the young and old to protected areas while the warriors armed themselves. The sky outside turned red as the enemy fleet began to surround them, blocking all paths. A message came through, cold and final: surrender the Varnik, or be destroyed. Jace stepped forward to respond, his voice calm but sharp, telling them the truth again, that these were not enemies, but survivors, exiles, peaceful now, just searching for others. But no one listened. A warning shot fired past the hull, close enough to shake the deck. Fen didn't wait. With a short command, the ship moved into battle mode. Shields rose, weapons powered up, and the Howling Light responded like a living thing. Jace took the main seat, Fen beside him, and they moved as one. The battle began fast and fierce. The enemy ships were many, their formation tight and cold, but the Varnik ship was faster, smarter, and built with a soul. Jace weaved between blasts, guided by Fen's sharp growls and hand signals, while Nyx targeted weak points in the enemy systems. They never aimed to kill, only to disable. Cannons fired to knock engines offline, EMP bursts fried scanners, and decoy flares confused missiles. Still, the enemy kept coming. One cruiser broke through and slammed into the outer hull, boarding pods launching toward the ship. Jace jumped up, running through the halls with Fen and a group of Varnik warriors. Inside, they met the attackers' armed soldiers in black suits, eyes cold, orders clear. The Varnik didn't fight like beasts, they fought with precision, protecting their young and pushing the soldiers back step by step. Jace used tools, traps, even broken panels to slow the attackers, and Fen fought like a storm, fast, quiet, unstoppable. One soldier raised his weapon toward a cub hiding near the wall, but Jace dove in the way, taking the hit across the arm. The pain burned, but he kept moving, pulling the cub to safety. The battle dragged on, both in the sky and inside the ship, and for a moment, it seemed like they might be overwhelmed. Then something changed. One of the enemy ships paused, then pulled back. Another followed. Confusion spread through their ranks. A voice came over the comms, an officer refusing to continue. He had seen enough. He called the mission wrong. Others listened. Some ships backed off completely. One even sent a medical pod for the wounded, shocking everyone. Jace and Fen returned to the bridge, blood on their clothes, but fire in their eyes. They watched as part of the fleet turned and vanished into the stars, leaving behind only a few ships that still aimed to fight. The howling light made no move to chase. It simply hovered, its body scarred but standing strong. Like the pack inside it, Fen placed his clawed hand on Jace's shoulder, saying nothing, but his silence meant everything. Loyalty had been tested, and it had not broken. Jace knew then that he wasn't just the ship's builder. He wasn't even just its pilot. He was part of the pack now, fully, truly. That night, they flew quietly through a narrow path in space, leaving behind the battlefield, carrying their wounded and their pride. The cub Jace saved sat beside him in the control room, watching him with wide, shining eyes. Fen stood behind them, silent as always, but his presence filled the room like a protective shield. They had survived the fire in the sky, but the war wasn't over. Somewhere out there, others were still hunting, still afraid of what they didn't understand, but Jace no longer feared them. He had seen loyalty on the ground, strength in the bond between alien and human, and hope in the eyes of every survivor. He knew they would keep going, and no matter what came next, he would face it beside Fen, aboard the howling light, with the pack that had become his family. The stars moved slowly around the howling light as it drifted through the quiet space, between forgotten worlds, no longer hunted, but still watched from a distance by those who feared what they didn't understand. The warship had become more than just a vessel, it had become a whisper, a name passed from planet to planet, from old station to wandering trader, told in hushed voices and uncertain tones. The ship that carried beasts, the ship that defended the lost, the ship that once stood against a human fleet and didn't fall. Jace, the human mechanic who had once lived in a silent junkyard, now walked the halls of the living ship beside Fen, who had become not only a leader to his people, but a symbol of survival, of something ancient refusing to die quietly. Each time they found another Varnik signal, the crew grew. More survivors came, some afraid, some sick, others barely clinging to life, but all were welcomed, each given space to rest, recover, and live again. The warship expanded to fit them, with Jace constantly adjusting systems, rerouting power, and repairing old parts with the same hands that had once built broken cargo haulers. His name too became part of the story, a human among wolves, the one who had not run when the beast crashed down. But their journey was not without danger. Strange ships sometimes followed, watching from the edge of long-range scans. On one moon, they discovered a hidden trap, an ancient weapon waiting for a Varnik signal to pass nearby. It activated as they approached, firing old energy beams in silence, but the howling light moved with speed and grace, dodging and weaving. While Nyx, the ship's AI, disabled the system with a sharp overload. Every close call made the story grow stronger. Traders claimed to see the ship vanish into clouds of dust, Pirates told tales of chasing it through asteroid fields only to lose their path in a sudden storm of light. Some believed it wasn't real at all, others believed it was cursed, but, for the one still lost in the galaxy, for the Varnick who heard the soft, ancient call in the stars, it was a promise. Jace kept track of every life they saved, each one added to the long list he scribbled in a worn notebook. He had stopped calling them aliens long ago. They were just people now, his people. Fen rarely spoke, but when he did, it was quiet and strong, filled with the weight of a long memory. One night, as they floated near a dying sun, he told Jace that the pack was whole enough now to begin again. Not just to run, but to rebuild. They had found a planet deep, hidden, untouched. It was wild and dangerous, but it could be theirs. Jace agreed without question. They turned the ship toward the dark side of the galaxy, where fewer maps reached and fewer enemies followed. The journey was long and full of shadows. They passed broken worlds where battles had long since ended, where the bones of old machines floated like silent warnings. But the ship moved forward, always forward, carrying its people like a memory that refused to fade. And then they arrived. The planet was blue and green, with strange floating mountains and skies that shimmered with mist. It was untouched, unclaimed. Fen stepped onto the surface first, and the others followed, silent and wide-eyed. For the first time, the pack didn't just survive, they had a place to live, to plant roots, to call home. Jay stood beside Fen, watching the cubs play near the river, watching the elders smile for the first time in years, and he felt something deep in his chest that words couldn't explain. They had made it, but they didn't forget. The howling light stayed in orbit, always ready, always watching. It wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a legend, a ghost, a beacon. Some said it had a heart, others said it could vanish at will. A few said it was guided by a human soul and a Volf's memory. And when the stars grew dark again and rumors spread of another purge rising in a distant system, the howling light lit its engines and returned to the stars, not to fight a war, but to protect the ones who could not run. It moved without sound, its shadow falling over silent moons, its lights glowing like the eyes of a watchful guardian. Jace stood at its helm, older now, wiser, with Fen always at his side, and the pack behind him. The galaxy would never forget what had once been a mechanic's dream, a beast's last hope, and a ship built for something greater than war. It had become a legend, not because it destroyed, but because it saved, and in every corner of space, where someone was alone and hunted, they looked to the stars and hoped to see it pass by the ship of the forgotten, now the protector of the lost.